So think of a PRD as the source of truth for any product, feature, or solution that you're getting ready to launch. Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Andrew, and I like to talk about product management, business, investing, all that fun stuff. And in today's video, I want to chat about how to create your first product requirements document, or PRD. So you're probably wondering what a PRD is. I know it's something that's going to be dropped around a lot when you start your product career. It's something I had to learn. I think it was on like day 3. I was in a meeting and was going over with our leadership what a product requirements document is. And it's extremely important because it's a piece of information, like a template that you'll use almost on a daily basis when you're talking about features or providing updates to your team. And so hopefully this video can give you some insight on how to create one. I know a lot of the noise on YouTube, and if you read articles, a lot of these things sometimes are overcomplicated, they're highly technical, and there's a lot of unnecessary information in those documents that can confuse a lot of first time or relatively recent beginners in product management. So hopefully this video can give you a straightforward, clear shot to understand what a PRD is, why it's important, and how to create your very first one. So what is a product requirements document, or as it's commonly referred to, a PRD? A PRD is an artifact, and by artifact I mean document, that's used in the product development process to communicate what capabilities and features need to be included in an upcoming product release when that information is shared with engineering or marketing or those various teams that support you. So think of a PRD as the source of truth for any product, feature, or solution that you're getting ready to launch. Let's say I'm working on a particular feature for a product, and I have my engineers and my product marketing team who need information about that particular feature. So on this PRD, I'm going to list out who's working on this feature, who are my engineers, who's the product lead and the technology lead, what requirements are going into this feature, what key things is this feature going to do, what decisions need to be made about the feature, what is the status of this feature. Is it something that I'm only doing discovery on? Is it something that's in planning, or is this something that is in current development? Is it connected to any other features that we have currently in the platform? And how can I get access to the information regarding different engineering tickets or resources associated with this feature? All of that information is contained within a product requirements document. And that's why it's extremely important to have a well-documented PRD, or product requirements document, for any feature, product, or solution that you're going to create on your product management team. So with that gives you kind of a high-level view in a nutshell of what a PRD is. Now what I'd love to do, I want to go ahead and jump into my computer and show you guys an example template of a PRD, and we'll walk through it step by step, kind of show you a common example of a very industry agnostic, or a very a PRD sample that's used across the industry to give you the most insight into what fields mean, how to fill them out, and how to think about answering the particular prompts and questions contained inside a PRD template. So with that, let's go ahead and jump in, and I'll see you guys in a second.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Okay, so I'm in my computer right now, and what you can see here on my screen, this is a sample product requirements document I just built up based on the PRDs that I've worked on from my experience, and kind of some industry standard templates. So you'll see something that will contain kind of a variation of the different items on here, but at a high level, kind of walk you guys through what each of these are and how I kind of think about them and my mental process when I walk through these. So it says product requirements document. Typically, you'll have the name of the project initiative that you're working on. So if it's like you're doing a particular feature for like logging in, right? If you're like implementing Face ID into your product, and that's your feature, you'll have that in there. Just an idea. Then you'll have this form right here. It's called I call them like our top line items, kind of usually a column or a field at the top that'll consist of a couple different things. The first one being target release. So target release refers to when's the time frame that you want to release this feature. So me personally, I think about it in quarters. So if I want to release it in Q3 of 2022 or Q4 of 2022 or Q1 of 23 and etc. The more dialed in that you get your PRD and the more dialed in you get the feature as it moves through your company or your organization's planning process, then you can start to refine that target release. If you're just starting on something and it's in a very like high level initial estimate view, then it's great to set a quarter release date. So if I'm working on something right now, hey, I'm going to go ahead and say I want to release this in Q4 of 2022. So something at the end of the year gives me a lot of time, a lot of lead time to go ahead and work on it, refine it. And then when I'm in, say, Q3, I can go ahead and say, okay, I want to target a November release and then maybe a November 11th release if that's the cadence at which you guys roll out features. That's what target release means. Then the next field here is called epic. So this is typically a link to some other documentation. So as I spoke about in one of my previous other videos, the concept of an epic being essentially a consolidation of all your user stories for a particular feature. So in this case, this PRD is going to list us all of our requirements from more of a high level business perspective. And then we want to actually include the link, the epic link. So if you guys are, if your organization's using something like Jira or another project management, product management tool, then you can go ahead and usually include that hyperlink there. That way, anyone viewing the PRD can easily access your epic and the consolidation of those stories, and then they can kind of drill down and look at those as well. And then the next item here, as these high-level metrics, is document and status stage. So really this refers to the stage that your feature's in. So think of it from the perspective of like discovery stage, right? You're just discovering, diving into, researching, brainstorming, that sort of thing. Then you have like a planning phase and then a development phase and release phase. So those are typically, just examples of what some of the more common phases are. So this is a field that you want to keep updated on your PRD as your feature is moving through your planning process, just so that anyone who views your PRD knows at a high level, right when they glance at it, what stage it's in, and then that'll help inform them on how to reach out to you or make suggestions and that sort of thing. It also lets your product leadership team, your executives, or anyone that is also responsible for other moving parts in your team to understand when something is in a particular stage and if they need to support you in any way. Then right underneath that, the fourth row here for our target or our top line area is your product owner and writer. So typically this will be, I put it on here as one field, but it can be multiple different fields. Just listing who's owning the product, who's kind of taking the lead on it, and then who are the supporting staff, or like supporting actors, right? What other product writers are you having? So say you're working on a feature that takes place on multiple products, right? If you're working with your smartphone application and your desktop application, and they're two separate products, but they need to talk to each other for this particular feature, you need to work with the product manager on the website and you running the software on the phone. That other product manager is going to be a product writer, because they're going to help to refine the features and make sure that what it is that you're building works with their system. Also, if you have different reports, if you have different associates or other staff that's going to be contributing to this, it's important to include them there so that they're notified. Typically, if you're using some sort of document management system, they'll be notified when you tag them on here, and then they can find the document easily. So that's really the top line columns. It's almost like a table of contents. It's some at a high level, kind of can glance and see what's going on with this particular PRD. So to get into now this list, I know you guys probably see this list, you're like, dang, that's a lot of stuff. There's a lot that goes into a PRD. So I want to kind of drill down into each one of these and make sure I, convey as clearly as possible. And then really how to think about these, because sometimes it's easy to get lost in the sauce and get confused and start, either not including enough or doing like word vomit and just putting tons of unnecessary stuff on a PRD. So think of this PRD, you want to be very clear and concise, right? You want to convey the message as much as you can in the least amount of words possible. So let's dive into it. Objective, this is the first one. So this section details what you want to do and why you want to do it. Try to steer away from including details on how you'll design this feature or how it'll work, or really like detailed minutia of the functionality, and really aim to keep it a high level. So, and that first sentence, I really want to emphasize, right? Put the detail, talk about what it is that you're going to do and why it is you want to do it. So, for example, I want to build some sort of a software app that does virtual voting, right? I don't need to get into, am I using biometric authentication? Are we building it on the blockchain? What colors are we going to do it? Are we going to launch it on these devices? That's all unnecessary stuff for this objective, right? What do I want to do? I want to build a digital voting app. And why do I want to do it? To allow individuals across the country to be able to vote at the convenience of using a smartphone. What you want to do and why you want to do it. So next, background. This section's fairly straightforward. The goal of the background really is to provide some further context surrounding why it is that you want to create this feature. So let's think, for example, on our digital voting idea, right? Voting from a smartphone. We want to build this software application. If I just said I wanted to build a software application that allowed you to vote from your phone, that doesn't provide enough context as to why it's important. So we need to think environmental factors, external and internal, that are going to help validate why it's important for us to build this feature. So for example, if I was building a virtual voting app or a software for the phone, I would say, hey, there was a lot of money spent on election recounts in 2020. That's an objective fact, right? What were the reasons for those recounts? Is because people didn't have confidence in the physical machine counting of ballots and hand counting of ballots, right? What that does is provide context for us to understand why it's important to build this application. So I would say, hey, there was millions of dollars spent on election recounts because people didn't have enough confidence in the physical voting machines. Therefore, that money could be better utilized in XYZ area, such that a virtual voting app would eliminate the need and would increase confidence in elections, right? That right there is providing some context for how we want to think about this background. So it's just important because you kind of mentally walk through this, provide context. If you're building something, think, for example, Headspace, right? The Headspace app that allows you to meditate, and it's like mindfulness coaching and things like that. The background for that could be, there was an uptick because of COVID. There was an uptick in depression and diagnosed cases of depression, early onset depression in young adults, young professionals, individuals between the ages of 18 and 25, right? That's context, because we're saying, hey, here's what's happening in the environment, and here's how this feature, this application, this product, whatever, can help solve a problem, fix a problem, save people money, save people something, improve the lives of individuals in a variety of ways. So that's what background really means. The next step here is success goals. So this section of your PRD should include the methods that you will use to track if your feature is successful or not. So we want to think of this objectively. And I know that's hard sometimes, especially when there's a feature that is very obscure and very hard to kind of, it's this like ball of Play-Doh, right? That's always kind of shifting. So you want to really pinpoint down what are your success goals, what are your success indicators? So if, for example, I was working on Headspace and I said that I'm building this product because there was an increase in depression due to COVID, and this software is going to allow people to take mindfulness training that's clinically proven to reduce the levels of ABC chemicals in the brain and thereby reduce symptoms of depression. Some success goals could be, hey, between the ages of this and this, we're aiming to decrease, the amount of clinically diagnosed cases of depression by 3%. That is a success goal. That's something that can be tracked by working with medical clinics and soliciting surveys and conducting research. There's another way of, hey, a success goal. We would like 10 million downloads in the first 3 years of our launch. That is a success goal, because right there you're proving the app is downloaded. So those are some examples of success goals. They want to be smart, right? You want to have them measurable, testable, around a particular time constraint or time field, and you want to make sure that you keep those in mind as you're building your feature. And then looking at your success indicators, right? Not just the goal of 10 million downloads, but the indicators of, hey, over the past 3 months, we've had 5 million downloads. We're on track to hit that goal. What are those indicators along the way that are allowing you to reach those goals? Because it's really important, especially in a bigger organization, when you're speaking to your product leadership, they're going to hold you accountable to those success goals. And it's very important to say, hey, not only do I like this feature, because sometimes as a product manager, it's very easy to get invested into a particular feature from an emotional level, but you want to always be able to fall back on the objective reality of, hey, this feature is working, this product's working, because here are my metrics. So let's go on to assumptions. So the assumptions section of your PRD includes any and all assumptions that you're considering before, during, and after building your feature. What do I mean by assumptions? So let's say we're building a virtual voting app, because this is something where we would have to make a lot of assumptions. If we're building a virtual voting application, we need to assume that the voters, that the people that we want to utilize the app, are registered to vote. We need to assume that they'll have access to internet. We'll need to assume that they'll have access to a mobile device, say an iPad or an iPhone, depending on which application we're building. We need to assume that they're able to upload their ID or complete whatever identity verification that we're going to build into this application. We need to assume a lot of these things when we're building the app. So you have to think about it. What are things that you're considering? And it's important to do this because you don't want to make false assumptions, and you don't want to not assume things, because then you're going to end up having this gap, right? If I didn't assume people were voting and I didn't account for that fact, and I didn't know that they weren't registered, and I release an app out there and I say, oh shoot, I need to go and now update this application for them to go and be able to access the voting infrastructure. That's an important assumption that I needed to make and have at the forefront. So not only me as a product manager, but my product leadership and engineering teams understand that, hey, we're going into this with this assumption, and then we're building off of that. Requirements. So the requirements section of your PRD includes information about the particular feature and what is needed in order for it to be launched. So let's think, let's take Instagram, for example, right? When we're working through the requirements section of a PRD, we want to think, what are each of the individual line items that need to be built, need to happen, need to take place in order for this feature to work? So if I was building Instagram, and I know this is a very big, complex product, but let's say at a very simple level, I wanted to be able to post pictures, no stories. I didn't need all the links and bio and Instagram Reels and all this stuff. I just wanted to build a photo sharing app like Instagram. What are the first requirements? Well, I need a requirement. People need to have user accounts, so they need to be able to log in. They need to be able to sign up. They need to be able to view their account page. They need to be able to upload an image. They need to be able to type a caption. They need to be able to follow other people. They need to be able to view other people's pictures. All of those are requirements, because you can see how they all are something that needs to happen in the app. And I want to write these requirements in the form of a user story. So typically this is what it'll look like. I have what the requirement is, the name. Usually it's in a row, and on the left side I'll have user access other accounts, right? I need the ability to view other accounts. Then I will write, from the perspective of a user, I'll say, as a user, or as whoever your user is, if you're building Headspace, right? As a user, if you're building Facebook, it's as user. Typically for social media, it's just user. If I'm building something like at SmartRent, we work with multifamily housing and like apartment complexes and things like that. So for our product that our residents use, we refer to them as residents, right? They're residents who live in an apartment. If you're building something for soccer coaches, as a soccer coach. If you're building software for property managers, it's as a property manager. You want to think in the perspective of whoever it is that your requirement is focused on. And I'll put together a video on creating user stories later down the line. But let's say, again, back to the idea that I'm writing this from the perspective of a user using Instagram. I'm going to say, as a user, I want to be able, or I expect to be able to follow my friends and family on Instagram. That right there, I expect to follow. As a user, I expect to view the pictures of my family, friends, and those I follow. That's the way that you want to think about putting together requirements like this. And then as you're working towards that, you also want to add at the end of that, the link typically to that user story, individual user story, in something like Jira or whatever your product management software is. And then you also want to include an area for any notes that you may add or your colleagues may throw in there that provides further context and information if there's any outstanding items, or if you have any comments that need to be made to the individuals who are working on those tickets. Next item on here is designs. So in this section, really just attach any mock-ups, wireframes, or early user journey maps that you have created that'll assist you in explaining your feature to stakeholders, leadership, or engineers. So really, if you have a design in Figma, if you yourself have kind of mocked that together and you put it together, say in Photoshop, or like I said, Figma, include that on there. But then as soon as you can, get what's called high fidelity design. So work with your UI, UX engineer, your design team to really refine what it is that user going to see. What are they going to visualize? And trust me, from my perspective, it makes it a whole lot easier to explain to the team, to your leadership, to engineers, to really all the parties involved when you have a like user journey map to walk them through, because it just helps. I'm a visual learner, and most people are either visual or kinesthetic learners. And so it helps to visualize something more than just to see it listed out. So the next item here is action items on this list. So does someone on your team need to research a specific legal requirement for this feature? Do you need to conduct an investigation into compliance regulations or technical limitations? That's where you want to include these action items. Typically, if you're using a file management software, you can go ahead and like tag the person who needs to have an action item. You can put a little checkbox, or if you just want a to-do list for yourself for this particular feature, you can list out all the action items that you need to do. I know that's sometimes what I do depending on the feature. So the next thing here is considerations. So are there any considerations you need to be aware of? So these aren't assumptions, but are rather just observations that can be helpful. I just dropped my pen. That can be helpful when creating this project or feature. So just considerations if, this is something that I use if there's like a related comment, someone's like, hey, we did this over here, this could apply. Or, hey, this is something to know from a technical perspective. Hey, this is located in this database. Or, hey, we've deployed, we built part of this over here, right? This is what considerations is for. Think of it differently than your assumptions. You're not assuming here, but you're just saying, hey, we're considering this, considerations. It's a good kind of catch section. And then the final item here on this PRD document is out of scope. So this section should include all the items that you would eventually like to pursue in later versions, later iterations, but for the sake of agility and launching this feature and product quickly, they need to be put into the future. So I know there's a lot. Really, at a high level, what are the things that we're not going to do? There's a famous quote, I forget who said it, but they said, in life, you're not measured really by what it is that you say yes to, but it's really what you say no to that matters. And that's really what this section talks about. What is out of scope? What are the things that you're not going to do? Because as a product person, I love to build stuff, right? And I imagine you do as well. It's kind of a trait that runs on the product family, I guess. But we like to build things, and we could build our hearts out until the earth freezes over, but in reality that's not how successful organizations and successful products are made, right? From a product perspective, we want to say, how do I meet the needs of the customer? How do I meet the needs of my user in the most efficient way, the most effective way, the amount that uses the least resources? We want to think very lean and very agile. How do I go 10 miles on 1 gallon of gas? That's kind of the idea. So with that, those are all of the different fields, areas, and sub areas, I guess, of a typical product requirements document. If you want this template, I can go ahead and send it to you. Just like shoot me an email or comment on the video or something, and I'll shoot it over to you.
So that wraps up kind of this how to create your very own first PRD. So I appreciate you guys sticking around and watching this. Hopefully it was helpful. It definitely was something that I wish I had. Again, I know a lot of these videos can overcomplicate it and bring in, talking about different tickets and technologies and tools and very abstract concepts. But again, hopefully this gave you a clear understanding of what a PRD is. If you have any questions, please feel free just to drop a comment down below, and I'll be happy to answer them there. If you have any suggestions or recommendations for any upcoming videos, again, I'm just a random guy on the internet, new to product. I like talking about it. It's a lot of fun, and I want to be able to share the career of product management with other professionals out there in the space. So if you're a college student or you're just looking to switch careers, definitely would highly recommend checking out product management as that possible career path. So with that, have a great rest of your day, guys, and thanks so much.